Welcome back to a new lecture. This is topic 1.5. We're talking about labor, slavery, and caste in the Spanish colonial system. And the theme for today is social structures. It refers to how societies organize themselves around certain hierarchies. The learning objective is explain how the growth of the Spanish Empire in North America shaped the development of social and economic structures over time. The first labor structure that we're talking about is the Encomienda System, and it's defined pretty well in the key concept here. In the Encomienda System, Spanish colonial economies marshaled Native American labor to support plantation-based agriculture and extract precious metals and other resources. This was essentially coerced labor. The Spanish crown would grant settlers and conquistadors land and labor if they promised to convert the natives that would be living on their encomienda. There were debates over the ethics of this within the Catholic Church. There were two priests with the Catholic Church advocating for opposing viewpoints. Bartolomé de las Casas was advocating for the end of the Encomienda system, saying that it was unethical. He said that the natives that he had encountered were human and had the capacity to be converted to Catholicism and Christianity. Therefore, they should not be enslaved. Meanwhile, Juan Guinness de Sepulveda believed the opposite. He thought that natives in the New World were savages and they did not have the capacity to accept God or to convert, so therefore it was okay to enslave them in such a way. Eventually, Bartolomé de las Casas wins the debate within the Catholic Church and the Encomienda system will come to an end, but not without many Native Americans dying within the system. So to clear up the pictures on the bottom right is Bartolomé de las Casas, and to his left is Juan Guinness de Sepulveda. The other two images also show the types of labor in which natives were forced to engage. In the next key concept, we'll introduce enslaved African labor. European traders partnered with some West African groups who practiced slavery to forcibly extract slave labor for the Americas. The Spanish imported enslaved Africans to labor in plantation agriculture and mining. The Spanish ran into two problems. The first one was that they could no longer coerce labor from Native Americans because the Catholic Church had said that that was wrong and that they could no longer do it. The second problem that they ran into was that the natives who they had coerced through the Encomienda system were dying too quickly because, again, they did not have immunities against some of the diseases that the Europeans were carrying. This is where enslaved African labor really began to increase. The Portuguese were leading the enslaved African trade. At the time, they would send enslaved people from West Africa into the Caribbean, and the Caribbean is where most of the sugar plantations that required a lot of labor were located. The work they would be doing was very strenuous and in tropical hot temperatures really brought the life expectancy of those who worked on the plantations. They were treated as human chattel. The word chattel means property, and because they continued to die on these plantations under harsh working conditions, the importation of human chattel continued all the way through the 1800s. Ultimately, 12.5 million people were transported in boats, such as this one on the screen, in which people would be packed shoulder to shoulder in various levels to try and get as many people to the New World as possible. Other social structures that we saw was the development of a caste system. The Spanish developed a caste system that incorporated and carefully defined the status of the diverse populations of Europeans, Africans, and Native Americans in their empire. Because most Spanish conquerors and explorers came in male-dominated groups and some had the hopes of getting land in the New World and staying there indefinitely, they began to intermarry with native populations. Spanish men and American Indian women would intermarry, and their offspring would be an ethnic mixture that now, according to the Spanish, had to be defined. Based on ethnicity and ancestry, certain privileges would be granted within society. At the very top of the caste system were going to be the peninsulares. They are the people who are Spanish and born in the Spanish Iberian Peninsula. Then below them are going to be the Creoles. These are people who have full Spanish ancestry, but they have been born in the New World. Below the Creoles are going to be all the different mixtures of the castas. Now, the generic term for a person who comes from Spanish and American Indian ancestry is a mestizo. The combination of intermarriage became so complicated that the Spanish would draw a large chart as the one on the screen to determine and solidify who was in which caste and what each intermarriage yielded. The further down you go down this chart, it gets more and more complicated, and they start to come up with nonsensical names or just made up names randomly because there are so many different mixtures. Below all the different mixtures of ancestry are going to be the full-blooded enslaved Africans and Native Americans. To give you an idea of what these castes were like, here are some of the pictures that are now blown up. See, the first one is the Spanish with an American Indian woman. That's the first one on the painting. And then number 7 below that is blown up. It depicts someone referred to as Chino. Chino was a derogatory term for someone who was of a mixed Indian and Black ancestry. The reason why they called them chino was because their hair would normally be curly like the tail of a pig. So chino is actually a short for the Spanish word cochino, the word for pig. In the frame, when a chino mates with a native woman, they produce someone called salta atrás, which literally translates to jump backward, as if the sight of this child would scare you and make you take a step back. Labels get more nonsensical the further you go. In frame 16, a man is labeled as a no te entiendo, which in Spanish translates to I don't know you or I don't understand you. Possibly dubbed this because his ancestry had been so mixed that it was indistinguishable. They couldn't really tell where to place them. If no te entiendo married with an Indian woman, their offspring would be what it's called a torna atrás. In Spanish, it would roughly translate to look behind you, possibly prompting someone to have a double take when trying to identify them. So the caste system, putting people on this hierarchical system based on ancestry, it should go without saying, is very inappropriate, but it also speaks to the fluidity of ethnic and race relations in the Spanish Empire in the New World. Because the fact that we have a caste system like this shows that there is mobility up, but mostly down, based on intermarriage. It shows that intermarriage is not something that was outlawed, which is going to be something that's completely different when we get into the English colonies, where intermarriage between two different races is going to be denied by law. All right, so a quick recap. You have to remember the Encomienda System and how it awarded land and coerced labor in exchange for missionary work. The rise of enslaved labor and African slave trade was led by the Portuguese. And finally, the Spanish caste system, what it meant for Spanish society, and what that said about the social structures they created in the New World. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, you can click on the video link on the screen. And if you're looking for more practice to help you on the AP exam, you can visit apushslides.com. I wish you the very best in all of your studying, and I hope to see you back on the next lecture.